I'll be reading verses 1 through 3. 1 Corinthians 16, verses 1 through 3. Now, concerning the collection of the saints, for the saints, as I directed the churches of Galatia, so you also are to do. On the first day of every week, here we go, first day of every week, each of you is to put something aside and store it up, as he may prosper, so that there will be no collecting when I come. And when I arrive, I will send those whom you accredit by letter to carry your gift to Jerusalem. If it seems advisable that I should go also, they will accompany me. Now, some say, there it is. Okay, proves it. The church met on Sunday. Okay, well, let's be clear. What does the Bible say? It does not say there was a meeting on Sunday. It doesn't say anything about a meeting. It just says, you guys, you individuals. He's not saying you as a congregation, you as the church of Corinth. He's saying, you guys, individually, each of you set aside something on the first day of the week. So the Bible does not say at all that there was some sort of a meeting. That violates exactly what the Bible has to say in Greek. You look at it in Greek, it's the same thing. I don't want to give you Greek lessons and so on, but that's what it says. Now, the each of you is individual. Now, what's interesting, too, is when you put this into the Jewish culture, I fully believe that they had their Shabbat on Saturday. And if this is the first day of the week, it's the next day. Okay, we would call that Sunday, or the first day of the week. And they're doing a collection then. Okay, they're actually putting money aside then. There is a strong possibility that in Jesus' day, in the synagogue, their collections were not allowed. Okay? Now, however, there's also evidence to suggest that they did have collections on Saturday. So we have a debate among really good scholars. And so we're in the middle, caught in between. In Jesus' day, you have to realize the synagogues did what they wanted. There was no set procedure. They had no law. Did they have singing in the synagogue? We don't know. Did they dance in the synagogue? We don't know. We have no writings on it. Okay? There are some suggested writings in the Talmud that it could possibly be. So we don't know. However, again, in the Jewish culture, it could be very possible that Paul practiced that. In other words, on Sabbath, no collection. So collect your money on another day. And it's possible. Now, the other thing, though, is this. This is fascinating. It says the first day of the week. Now, in Greek, it says on the first day of Sabbaton. I would say, whoa, Sabbaton. Now, what's fascinating is when you take a look at very scholarly Greek lexicons, and you actually study it, they'll say, well, Sabbaton means week. No, it doesn't. There is another Greek word, which I'll share with you, that means week. Now, what's a week? It's a 7-day period. So if I say today is Saturday, and it's November, what's November what? 16th, okay. In a week from now, okay, you would say, well, that's 7 days. Okay. A week is a 7-day period. Yes? Sabbaton seems to be something else. The Greek word for week is ebdomara. That's a 7-day period. It's ebdomara in the Koinonim Greek. Okay, it's actually in the Bible. It's actually in Leviticus 23, and when it talks about the fact that in Hebrew it says on Pentecost that you will count 7 Sabbaths. Okay, but in the Septuagint, 7 Sabbaths. But in the actual Septuagint, it says 7 ebdomara weeks. Total misrepresentation of the word. Now, at Sabbaton, okay, from Thayer's Greek lexicon, you're not going to get this from a concordance. A concordance doesn't help you with the meaning of words at all. It just shows you the position of words in the Bible. Never use it. Never, ever use it to try to find the meaning of a word. Location of a word, but you need a lexicon. And then you have to know a little bit about a Greek and Hebrew as well. Thayer's is one of the best Greek lexicons. And he goes in there and he says, throughout the Bible, Sabbaton actually translates, or is the word translated from the Hebrew, from two Hebrew words. Okay? Sabbaton can be the translation of Shabbat. So when you're actually, or Sabbath. Okay, so when you're actually seeing the Hebrew word Shabbat, you need to take a look in the Greek, it'll be Sabbaton. Okay, see, that's got nothing to do with a week. It's got everything to do with the Shabbat. Okay? The other one is, there's a Hebrew word called Shabbaton. You can say, whoa, that sounds like Sabbaton in Greek. Shabbaton, the best way you can translate it is of the weekly Sabbath. It doesn't mean the weekly Sabbath, it means of the weekly Sabbath. You might say pertaining to the weekly Sabbath. Or it could mean, okay, that it's the first day of the Sabbath week. Now, when you actually study the Jewish culture, the Jewish people say the Sabbath is preeminent of any day of the week. And so, when they said, they never said Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. Why? Because they're names of pagan gods. The Torah says you will not use the names of pagan gods, so they didn't. So they called it the first day of the week. But they would call it the first day of the Sabbath week. The second day of the Sabbath week. The third day of the Sabbath week. And the seventh day is Sabbath. That's what it was called. So you have first day, second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day, Sabbath. Okay? So the first day of the Sabbath week, of that Sabbath week that's coming. So, if the Sabbath was changed, why call it Sabbaton? You see what I'm saying? If Jesus changed and said Torah is null and void, if he changed that, and Paul believes this, and John and the whole early church, why use a Greek word, Sabbaton, that used throughout the Hebrew Scriptures for something that's very Jewish? That doesn't make any sense. Because if they believed the Torah was now on Sunday, why didn't they say this? Why didn't they say that this was the first day of Ebdomara? The first day of the week. The first day of the 7-day weekly period. Or why didn't they say this? This is the first day. Why didn't Paul write in 1 Corinthians 16 and verse 2, this is the first day of the week, our weekly Sabbath? Why didn't he indicate that it's the Sabbath day? He didn't. He used Sabbaton, and he did not use the word Ebdomara. So, 1 Corinthians 16, 1 through 3 does not show that the early Christians met on Sunday for worship. Absolutely not. It doesn't even say that. Okay? And this it does not even show that the Sabbath was changed so that the argument that Sunday was their day of the Sabbath, because it dismisses the Greek and the ancient culture. Now let me just stop here, okay, and add a caveat to this. The argument can still be made, okay, by those who say, no, I still hold to the fact that they were having their worship on Sunday. But this verse, for the things that we just looked at it, takes away an awful lot of their ammunition. Okay? It may not prove it conclusively, but it takes a lot of their ammunition away in terms of their argument. Let's take a look at another one. This is Acts 2, chapter 20, verses 7 through 12. You'll remember this event, okay? You'll remember this story quite clearly. Acts 20, verses 7 through 12. This is another key verse that there are people in the church in general, that say this proves that they were having Sunday worship. So, Acts 20, verses 7 through 12. On the first day of the week, guess what's used there? Ebdomara or Sabbaton? Sabbaton. So now we have a Greek word that's related to the Jewish culture. Okay? Sabbaton is used exclusively for actually translating two Hebrew words, Shabbat or Shabbaton. Okay? And it's never used for the week. Because there is no week for the Hebrews. There's only the Sabbath week. There's only the Sabbaton. So, on the first day of the week when we were gathered together to break bread, Paul talked with them, intending to depart on the next day, and he prolonged his speech until midnight. There were many lamps in the upper room where we were gathered, and a young man named Eutychus, sitting in the window, sank into a deep sleep as Paul talked still longer. I know the feeling. Okay, those sitting in the back usually are snoring, but yeah, Greg is just, he's the pastor, holy cow. So, sitting at the window, sank into deep sleep as Paul talked still longer, and being overcome by sleep, he fell down from the third story and was taken up dead. Paul went down and bent over him, and taking him in his arms, said, "Do not be alarmed, for his life is in him." And when Paul had gone up and had broken bread and eaten, he conversed with them a long while until daybreak, and so departed. And they took the youth away alive, and were not a little comforted. Not a little, I mean, they were really comforted. So, this better translation would be understanding what Sabbaton, the Greek word, does. A better way of saying it for us is the first day of the weekly Sabbath, or the first day of the Sabbath week. Okay? It just makes sense. So again, if the Sabbath had changed, why didn't Luke write? Why didn't he write on the first day of Hebdomada, okay, of our Sabbath, but he didn't write that? I mean, there's no indication from Luke. Why didn't he say, hey, we changed the Sabbath, and it's on the first day of the week, and we don't use Sabbaton anymore. We actually use the word Greek, Hebdomada. It's not there. So, like I said, when we take a look at the Greek and we take a look at the Jewish context of this, a lot of their argument is taken away. So, here's the other one. We've come together to break bread. Oh, that's it. Okay, sorry, Ferret. They win. Okay, breaking bread, what's that? That's Holy Communion. Okay, now, Luke's Jewish. Paul's Jewish. John's Jewish. Everybody in this Bible is Jewish. Okay? Well, there's a couple of people that aren't. Priscilla and Aquila. Okay, we were just talking about her today. Cornelius, a couple of other people in there. So, there's once again those who have a preconceived belief will try to force the Bible to say something that it doesn't mean. I mean, they're looking for straws in the haystack and they can't find any. Okay? Now, the assumption that breaking bread is Holy Communion, we got to consider this in the Jewish context. Okay, breaking bread, okay, whether you're reading it in English, in Greek, or in Hebrew, is a Hebrew idiom. It's a way of saying something. Okay, it's slang, right? And so, for instance, let me just give you some things from Jewish literature about breaking bread. This is from This is from a quote from the Commentary on the Jewish Roots of Acts, Volume 2, by Joseph Shulam from netevia.org. This guy is a brilliant scholar. He is a Messianic Jew. And like I said, this is the Commentary on the Jewish Roots of Acts, Volume 2, on this verse. Okay, so here's, I took this out from his book. The breaking of bread is something which is done in the context of a meal. In fact, the Talmud, the Jewish oral law, uses the term only in reference to the blessing at the start of the meal. So not only is breaking bread the meal, but technically speaking in the Talmud, it's only used for the blessing when you're going to start eating a meal, okay? The breaking of bread. The one who says the blessing over the bread is referred to as the one who breaks bread. At every meal it was and is the custom to have bread and wine. The blessings over the bread and wine were said at the beginning of the meal. The one who recited the blessing did so while literally breaking the bread. Okay, here's some quotations. This is from, now I know you'll be rushing out to get your Talmud, and this is from the Babylonian Talmud, Rosh Hashanah 29b. And this is the quote, "Our rabbis taught, a man should not break bread for visitors unless he eats with them." That's hospitality. Okay? So don't break bread with visitors unless he eats with them, but he may break bread for his children and the members of his household so as to train them in the performance of religious duties. You have to train your children how to say the blessing before a meal. Oh, and by the way, this is not grace before a meal. This is something else. This was a blessing for the bread and the wine. It's a blessing for the opening of a meal. Okay? God said the blessing or the grace for meals is done after. That's a command by God. You will bless, okay, me and thank me for the meal after, not before. Okay? And that's in Deuteronomy 8. after verse 7. I can't remember the exact verse. But read Deuteronomy 8, it's in there, and God, you'll read it where God says that. So here's another one. Rabbi Abba said, on the Sabbath, it's one's duty to break bread over 2 loaves. Okay, that's rabbinical teaching. So where do they come up with 2 challah loaves? Right here. Okay, did Jesus do 2 challah loaves in his day? We don't know. I have no idea. Also, here's another one. Is it related to Rabbi Phineas ben Yair that never in his life did he say the blessing over a piece of bread which was not his own? Now, technically speaking, it actually says he never broke bread that was not his own. Okay? But they had to expand the words so we understand what's going on here. The breaking of bread is actually that prayer. Rabbi Abba said on Sabbath one should break bread from 2 loaves. So as we consider the Jewish context, okay, this makes sense. Paul's Jewish. He would have understood this. Breaking of bread is the meal. And it could very well be he's talking about breaking the bread and actually the blessing that they have before they have a meal. So, and I highly recommend this. Those of you that are watching on the video, 2 excellent resources. Again, are Shulam, S-H-U-L-A-M, Joseph Shulam's 2-volume on the Jewish roots of Acts from netevya.org. You can't get it on Amazon. You can get it at Netevya, Netivyah.org, or Dr. Shamuel Safrai's 2-volume work, The Jewish People in the First Century. Dr. Shamuel Safrai is a celebrated Jewish Bible historian. He's now passed on, and his daughter and his son have taken over for him, all PhDs from Hebrew University. And the Jewish people in the first century is quite amazing, because all of a sudden you read about what it was like in Jesus' day. So, now, matter of fact, from Shamuel Safrai's book, and the Jewish people of the first century, this is what we find. This is what they did, okay? When Sabbath was over at sundown, so if it's like in Jesus' day, at sundown tonight, which is at 4:42 p.m. So just to let you know, don't light any fires, okay, until after 4:42. So when Sabbath was over and it was sundown on Saturday, the religious Jewish people had a large meal. It was after, okay, it was a new day. It was a new day because the Sabbath is over. Remember, their day started at sundown and it ended at sundown. So when does Sunday start for the Jewish people? At sundown. It's the first day of the week. It's the first day of the Sabbath week. The Romans had the first day of the week at midnight. You see the difference? Abdomata has got everything to do with midnight to midnight. Sabbaton has got everything to do for sundown to sundown. This is the Jewish culture. So, it was the first day of the week, the first day of the Sabbath week, and they can light the candles. And they did relight the candles, and they had a gigantic meal. So again, this fits the event. Makes more sense when one considers, again, the Jewish culture. Now, just for instance, it says in verse 7, Paul talked till midnight. How did they know it was midnight? Well, they had a Jewish watch. It's a little sundial on there, that type of stuff. They can kind of move it. Well, mine's digital. How do they know it's midnight? They have no idea. Because there's a Greek word there that means midnight. But it translates a Hebrew word. Okay? And the Hebrew word means the middle of the night. That's not midnight. When's the middle of the night? That Jewish word is not precise, like midnight, okay? It means the middle of the night. Could be before dawn. So in other words, when you read this, Paul was talking, I promise you're going to have lunch. I promise you, I'm not going to midnight, all right? I'm not going to noon, okay? You're going to eat lunch, sure, because I know there's only 20 pages left. So at any rate, it means that he talked perhaps well past midnight. And it could very well be that the first light of dawn was happening. That's the Hebrew. No, we don't know. Okay? So midnight's, all right, good. So, again, when we look at this, you cannot only use the English translation. And you guys, this happens all the time. Oh my gosh. I deal with this as a Bible historian constantly. People are asking me questions over and over and over again. One, they're not using proper historical sources. They're using the Chumash. They're using rabbinical thought. They're not checking the rabbis. I mean, what does the Bible say? What does the Bible not say? They're dismissing the Greek, dismissing the historical context and the textual context. You can't mess around with God's Word. This is not a comic book. Okay, this is God's Word, and we have to be quite in awe and in fear of His Word. So, there are many places where in the church today, ancient Greek and ancient Hebrew are completely dismissed. I know of a seminary in particular that's very close to us that actually dismisses the ancient Greek and the ancient Hebrew. They only teach the Bible in English, and they make a statement at this seminary here locally in Minnesota, what I will not name it, okay, that the Bible changes meaning per culture. The Bible changes meaning per culture and time. That's taught. How can this be? How can you read the verse that at one time meant X, okay, but now means Y? You know what that means? There's no absolute truth. None. Truth is relative to space and time, to place and time. This is critical, ladies and gentlemen. We need to study Bible in its historical context. Malachi 3:6, listen to this. Is this true or isn't it? I, the Lord, do not change. Period. And two items, in Revelation and also in the Torah. Okay, you can read it. I can't think of the exact places. Don't add anything to this word. That's in Revelation and also in the Torah. Don't add anything. Okay. John 8:31 through 32. You've heard this. I'll paraphrase it. Jesus was talking to Jews who believed Him. And He said, if you're truly my disciples, in other words, you truly want to be what I am. That's what a disciple is. And that's what you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be like Him. If you're truly disciples, you will abide in my word and you will know the truth. Oh, I'm sorry. But Jesus, what truth for what place and time? Because you see, Jesus, your word is changing and your truth changes for place and time. You will know the truth and the truth will set you free. And what did Jesus say? I am the way and the truth. Sorry, He's relative to time. He means something different for everybody. Let's take a look at a third verse. Revelation chapter 1, verses 9 through 11. Revelation chapter 1, verses 9 through 11. I, John, your brother and partner in the tribulation and the kingdom and the patient endurance that are in Jesus, was on the island called Patmos on account of the word of God and the testimony of Jesus. There you go. I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day. And I heard behind me a voice like a trumpet saying, write what you see in a book and send it to the seven churches, to Ephesus, to Smyrna, to Pergamum, to Thyatira, to Sardis, to Philadelphia, and to Laodicea. Okay. John says it's the Lord's day. Oh, that's it, the Lord's day. That's it. Sunday. Prove it. We're done. Okay? Now, Sabbath is on Sunday because that's what we call the Lord's day, and they break bread because breaking bread means communion. Okay, that's okay. Now, the Hebrew there, or the Greek is kuriaki hemera. Kuriaki hemera. So those two Greek words, you can actually interpose them. You could say hemera, kuriaki, or whatever. So you could see the Lord's day or the day of the Lord. And He's in the Spirit. Now, I'm going to do this. This is awesome. I want to take a look at in the Spirit. Now, in the Spirit is all over the New Testament. And it only occurs once in the Hebrew Scriptures. Now, this is fascinating because it seems to be a Greek idiom. Not a Hebrew idiom, a Greek idiom. And here's John writing under Jesus' authority and also His command to write to the churches of Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, etc. in Greek. Okay? So, what does in the Spirit mean?